Well, hello, and welcome to the Coaching Business Spotlight Show. I'm your host, Kat Knecht. And like every show that I do, I'm excited to share with you a soul driven strategy that's here to help you succeed in your business and your life. Today, we're going to take a look at how to stay focused on the long game. So, we're looking at your coaching business, and believe me, creating a successful coaching business and being prosperous and making it a lifelong career is a long game. We're going to look at how to stay focused on that long game while working on a short term plan because the truth is you need both. And today, to help me with this, so here's the thing, a short term plan. Let's say, how short term was it? Like maybe 15 minutes of a short term plan. I'm creating this podcast. I'm getting it. I'm thinking what I want to say. I'm writing some things in my script. And it comes to me that having my husband, Curtis, who is also my business partner, come on as a guest would be ideal. So I think he said I hoodwinked him or roped him or talked him into it. So welcome to the show, Curtis. Thanks for being here.
I think I used the word bushwhacked.
Bushwhacked. I don't think I even know what that means. So okay. Okay, bushwhacked.
Thank you for having me, Kat. I appreciate
Well,
this.
here's how this is going to go. I'm going to tell a little bit. I'm going to tell a story, a true story about me and long game and short-term planning, and then we're going to take a look at kind of how those two things play together. And I'm going to look for your input on your own experience with that. So, the story that came to me today, and there are probably many, many that you could help me remember, but there was this long game I had. It's still really clear in my mind when I first became a coach. I knew what I wanted my life and my work to look like. I wanted to be coaching people. I wanted to have my own program. I wanted to lead my own groups. I wanted to write a book or two and to be a leader for the Coaches Training Institute. And my long game was to support myself financially while being fulfilled in my day to day work and life. That was the long game for me. I had you could call it a vision. It feels like a little more than a vision because that's why I'm calling it a long game, is because I like, ooh, there's a lot of things that I want and I want all of them. And I know I can't have them all at once, but that's the ideal picture of where I'm heading. That's the really long game. Now, at that time, this was before you and I knew each other, way, way back, I had a short-term plan. So this is what I learned early on in my life, and this short-term plan served me very, very well. It might seem so. My short-term plan was to sell my house. Funny enough, we're selling a house right now. Selling houses kind of plays into short-term plans for me, maybe. But I had this idea to buy an apartment house that had come up for sale. I'm nearby, so sell my big single-story house, buy an apartment house that would have rental income to cover my mortgage. In this plan was reducing my spending. And a part of that plan was I asked my family if they would be willing to sacrifice some of the fun stuff because I knew that in order to really have my coaching business be successful, eventually I would have to quit my full-time, very lucrative job. So I started the short-term plan was I started building in the financial support for myself. And before I quit my full-time job, I had my short-term plan was to find a part-time job because I had been in the business long enough to know that depending on my coaching income right at the beginning was going to be disastrous. It was going to have me being, whatever, stressed and out there, roping people, bushwhacking people off the streets. I knew this. So I had a short-term plan. And I started working that short-term plan. I did. I sold my house. I bought the apartment house, reduced my spending. I got the part-time job. So I want to say right now, the long game has been amazing. For any of you out there who are just starting, or even if you're mid-career as a coach, I encourage you to keep going because the long game is amazing. When I looked at it today, Curtis, I'm like, I think I've achieved everything I started out to do 20 years ago. And yet it's still unfolding. and there's more. The long-term game has become bigger and better. And it's still a long-term game. There's still things like that's going to happen in a year or two, or maybe 5 years to really get that fully complete. So here, some of this happened quickly, like I just said. So some things happened quickly in the short term. I got clients. I got a job with CTI fairly quickly in the first couple of years. I learned about what fulfillment was. I There were things that were like writing 2 books, scaling my business beyond the initial startup phase that took so much longer than I thought. I really thought, oh, I'm going to be able to just get in there and get those things going. So it's really important to have the long game and know when those things aren't yet happening, you don't have to get stressed by them. You just keep putting things in the short-term plan that are going to lead to that. That's what I've learned. Here's what kept me on track, even when I was way off track. And this is where I'm going to ask you to play in here in a moment, Curtis, because this is when we were together. This is when you knew me. This is how this all happened. So I had some things went way off track for me. I had things happen all at one time. I got a divorce, my dad died, and I moved to California. That was big. A lot of things in my the long game plan started to look like they would never happen. And I had to totally retool my short-term plan. It had been one thing, now it needed to be something else, but I needed a short-term plan. And I can almost literally remember you and I sitting down um, early on and going, okay, we need a plan for what we're going to do just in the next couple of months and maybe the next year. And that long game might be a little bit longer because some things happen. Another thing, the economic downturn in 2008. CTI was right laying off leaders, clients were scattering like the wind, and wow, once again, we were selling a house. Fancy that. I just am seeing the thread here. There's something about house selling that seems to. And during the pandemic, we were not selling a house. We were hovering in our house. But I had to close down my in-person office. Your job with destinations had gone away. I couldn't work with local clients anymore. I had all kinds of group work I used to do in person. It all just went blah 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 bye bye. So I needed, and again, this is in the book, Evolve Your Coaching Business. There was a pivot that Curtis and I had to make during the pandemic. We just had to pivot really harshly. A lot of people did, but we knew what we were aiming for. So even in the pivot and the downturn and the all of that, we knew here's the long game for us is that we are business partners with a business that's actually helping and serving at a high level of people. And for us, we chose coaches so that we can support them to do their work and we can have a community that we love and get to engage with. And we get to make money at that and we love it. So, what I want to really bring you in on, and then after you answer this question, if there's, we can play back any of that I've talked about, is so when you and I first got together, planning was not your favorite thing. And am I right about that?
You're right. Right
Yeah.
as rain. Yeah.
Yeah. So you had resistance to planning. I'd love to hear maybe a two-part answer to what was the resistance and what has helped you shift to being a good planner.
Well, I think I've lived most of my life thinking that planning was deadly.
Mm,
Planning kind of killed things off. You made a plan, then you were obligated to follow the plan exactly as you made it. And it just felt stifling to me. And
mm.
I felt I think there was a feeling of oppression. I would say these are stifling, oppression, deadly. They're kind of intense words, but I got to tell you, my reaction to planning is you're not going to get me. No, no, I'm not going to do that.
That is really, I love it. I love how you're laying it out. And I'm reminded of we had a call last week, our mastermind call, and we were talking about this topic. And there were some people on the call who have worked for organizations. So, I think maybe there's some things that happened in our childhood, but also people, and I am one of those who work for organizations where there's a plan and you have to execute it,
Mm,
whatever hell or high water, in a way that is deadly, in a way that is just doing tasks that have no meaning, that don't actually bring you alive. I mean, that's what I'm getting from what you're saying is that planning can be, here's what I'm supposed to do.
right.
And if I don't do it, I'm in trouble or I'm going to do something wrong.
Well, and I realized I've just hit me too. The background for me of planning was my parents had a plan for my life.
Ooh,
And it was a
yes.
very, very strict plan. And I had to go to school and college and grad and do these things. And at a certain point, I said no to it. And I think I said
Mm,
no to it. And that became the basis, no to planning. So that when you came into my life and offered this planning I resisted. I'm like,
yeah.
no way, no way,
Yeah, yeah.
sweetheart.
That is that is really interesting to me. And I'm wondering, people who are watching or listening, if you think back, if you have a resistance to planning, this is what I suggest you do is take a look at where did that grow in you? What experiences did you have that actually were really negative? Because I get that if people have a plan for us, if there's some kind of plan that is wanted that doesn't include what we want, what's really good for us. And here's the thing that I have heard from people that I work with, clients who, when I start helping them plan, are so resistant, is they say, "Yes, but Kat, I like to live in the present moment.
Right.
We only create in this moment. I don't want to be thinking about the future and living in the future." And I have such a different perspective on planning. So I'm going to be curious to hear kind of I'll lay it out there for you and hear how it's worked for you, the way that I think about planning. Not at all as if I'm not living in the current moment. What I love about short-term planning, and this is why I'm bringing these two, because I think it's good to, the long game. So in the long game, we think of the big and great and wow things. In the short terms, it's like, how am I going to get from A to B to C? How am I going to like what are the things that are a part of the long game that are going to get me there? So
Hmm.
one thing that I love about planning is I find it creative to go and say, well, if I want to have a book published by the end of this year, well then, or in 5 years, if that's the long game, what are some things that would lead up to that? That would be aligned with that, and actually I would enjoy, or it would grow me, or align with my values. So I'm thinking when I did decide finally to write a book, it was so hard to sit down and do that. It's just so many. I realized one of the main things that I gave myself permission to do in writing that book was just to write, as simple as it might sound. So some things that when you're looking at the short-term plan, you want to put in there, you're just going to do the activity without a whole big outcome. It aligns with the long game, but there's some way of holding it like, okay, I'm going to do the thing and see what happens. I don't know if I'm making sense here. Help me out. But I feel like there's a creativity of saying, okay, this is how I'm imagining it's going to go. I start writing, I start getting some clues about what I want to write about, something excites me. And then once that happens, then I'm going to have a better idea about what kind of book, and then I can write an outline. Or I start writing and I realize I hate writing. What did I even think of writing a book? Or maybe I need to find a ghostwriter, or maybe I need to do a whole different thing. But I need to make the plan for it, short-term plan, so I can find out if this is right, or what are the steps that are gonna be to help make this long game happen.
What I hear you talking about, Kat, is having the plan is the context for this present moment activity. You're talking about this dance between a plan that's looking out into the future and this moment now here that we are living in. And I hear you, I want to write a book. Well, that means writing. That means in the present moment, you're writing, you're putting things
Yes.
down. And yes, there's a book out there that may come from it or not in the future. But if you didn't have the context of, there's a book I want to have in the world that's from me, a message I have, then if you didn't have that context or that plan, you really would be kind of lost in the moment when you're writing stuff.
Just twiddling around is what came to me. It's kind of like, what's the point of this? And it's kind of fun. And you're reminding me really and truly what happened during the downturn, the economic downturn. And I hope this isn't a segue, but if it is, we'll get back on track with what we're talking about here. Sometimes when challenges happen in the long game, it looks like, ooh, this is not going, like you keep your focus on the long game and you recreate the short-term plan. Because I remember I recreated the short-term plan back then. I focused on group coaching, like totally, because people weren't willing to spend money on private coaching nearly as much. So it's like, let's do a whole bunch of group coaching, and I'm gonna finally have time to write my book. And both those things happened during that economic downturn. So kind of threading from what you were saying. So in the moment, so I have this long game of group coaching was definitely in the long game, but the short-term plan needed, okay, now because of something that's happening right now, I need to make that short-term plan, I need to refocus it. So you were talking about how it's in the moment that we have to write, and it's in the moment that we have to take stock of what's happening right now. Some things beyond our control. The economic downturn was not my fault.
No, it wasn't.
But if I had just kept going, like, yes, but this is what I'm doing, and I'm growing my business like this, and it's been working out so well, instead of going, okay, well, what is now, let's recreate the short-term plan to include what's happening right now, but it needs to align with that bigger.
And I think that's one of the things that softened me up to planning was the recognition that it wasn't set in stone. You had to remind me this a lot of the time, and it was sometimes unsettling when I would buy into a plan and then it needed to be changed. I wanted
Yes. Oh my gosh.
this thing I hated about planning was the way I thought it's supposed to be,
Mhm.
is rigid. And I think you're talking about agility, you're talking about
Mhm.
flexibility, you're talking about being in the moment and managing a plan in the moment based on what's happening right now. So I began to see that a plan it didn't take me away from the present moment or from spontaneity or from responsive to changing circumstances. The other thing I discovered about this dance between being in the present moment and making a plan was the falseness of my thought that if I'm making plans, I can't be in the present moment. What I've discovered over the years, and I've had years of reshaping my thinking, is what
Hallelujah.
I've discovered is that if I have a plan or when I have a plan, I can be more present to this moment and more fully engaged in this moment right now as I'm carrying out the plan or as I'm living into the plan. It rather than robs me of the present moment, it actually
Mm.
gifts me the present moment because the context is set and I can relax. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
both be here now and think 10 minutes from now or 10 days or 10 years from now. I can be, here's my vision, here's my plan, and here's where I fit in it right now. And it's pretty cool. Or it's not cool. It's whatever it is.
Well, you're bringing up something I think important for the listeners. A plan, a short-term plan, especially, can be really, really relaxing.
Yeah.
And as Curtis is talking about, it actually can help you stay present because your mind isn't going, I wonder what I have to do next. And I wonder what this is all going to add. The mind starts twirling and the saboteur gets worked up. A plan relaxes all of that. And here's another piece you're reminding me of what I love about planning is that there's some things, if we plan ahead, are going to save us money and time.
Oh, big time. Yes.
Like, Stephen Covey, what is his, one of his habits is measure twice, cut once. And
Yeah.
I apply that to planning because for me, it's like when I go out and plan, I can think things through. If they're not happening in the present moment, I can go, okay, so if I hire that publisher to publish my book and it's due in January, then okay, all right. Oh, no, no, I don't, it can't be published in January. I'm not going to have those things ready. I need it so we can start. You can actually go, oh, let's make this accurate as opposed to just making it up as you go along. What's your experience with that? That it saves us time and money to plan ahead.
Well, I think we do, over the 20 years of my education and planning, I've gotten so I just am taking it more for that's just how I live now. And yeah, time, money, energy, it reduces saboteur activity. I mean, I'm an advertisement for getting over the resistance to planning and
That's why I hoodwinked you into coming on here today. Because
bushwhacked.
because I
Yeah, no,
know.
really, it's been a real education for me, this one area, and I agree. Yeah, like this house deal we're doing it without a plan, I'm going to be pretty stressed. The plans we have made, plan A, B, and C,
Hmm.
I'm relaxed. So it goes this way, great. And I've got a plan that way. We got a plan this way. We got a plan. And I think in the moment, I'll know what to do. And of course it'll run into an obstacle and then we'll dance in the moment. But we've, coactive coaches, we learn dancing in the
Dancing in this
moment
moment.
essential. It's a good life skill.
Yeah. I love all the things you're saying. Again, I'm tuning into the people I work with, because really this has been one of the most resistant areas. And in the Evolve Your Coaching Business course that we offer, the success that the coaches have had in that course have come about because I have helped them, and there are training programs I have on it about how to plan, right? Because you want to make sure that it feels good. The plan feels good. It feels right. Like you just mentioned, being coaches, we align it with our values. We
Yeah.
check in. Does this, connect with my higher life purpose? Is this right? So the plan has to feel good. Here's the piece I'm going to add in, though. This is where a lot of resistance I get has come from. It's really uncomfortable. Having a plan is really uncomfortable for a lot of the reasons
Amen.
that you said.
Amen.
So I want to lay out for you, for our listeners here, two things. What is it that makes it uncomfortable, and how to really be able to, what's the word, like incorporate that uncomfortableness to actually include it and accept it and have it, maybe even rename it. So I'm going to say for me, it feels uncomfortable because I might look bad. You know me, I like to look good. I have a plan. That means I want that plan to work. And especially if I'm sharing that plan with other people, like our team. And sometimes I talk on these podcasts about things that I'm going to do and in my blog and my family. So I might look bad because it doesn't turn out. I might fail. It might take a lot longer than I think. I might not be able to do it. So the
Yeah.
plan is kind of, as I'm creating the plan, I'm putting my hand up here. It's like, oh, yes, but this is going to require something of me. And that's, doubts can play in, but a lot of it is knowing, actually knowing that there's no perfection. I can make the plan and it can seem logical, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's how it's going to go. Mostly it doesn't go that way. It requires pivoting and readjusting. And in that process, that's uncomfortable for me. And I think you spoke to that earlier about you just want the plan to be the plan, but no, it's not.
Well, and for me, I just hit me as you were talking that the vulnerability that I feel with the plan is it requires me to say exactly what I want
No,
and
yes.
put my heart into it. I really want this. And
Mm,
so that's a vulnerable place. And I'm planning, this plan is to get that. And if I don't get it, I'm going to be disappointed. It's going to hurt. And well, you said too, it'll look bad maybe, but I don't care that much about the looks as much as I
yeah,
do
yeah,
about that
yeah.
ability. Yeah.
Yeah, so both. So there's that disappointment, the inner feeling. It could actually, stir up feelings of inadequacy and insecurity. And for then there's the outside piece. It could also stir up other people. Well, weren't you going to do this, Kat? Oh, well, I
Yeah,
thought the plan
right.
was that it was going to work like this for you.
Yeah.
And for me, that is so uncomfortable to both those. And they play together, right? So this is the tip I want us to help bring the listeners is how to keep those voices at bay. What have we learned? I know we've learned things that, okay, short-term plan needs a pivot or a tweak or maybe a whole like that didn't work. Let's do it again. How have we managed to really work through those inner voices and to deal with the outer questioning? Maybe you take the inner voices and I'll take the outer questioning since that's those seem to be our biggest challenges.
Well, it's funny. I was just thinking that we've developed a planning system over the years. And I think that I just edited the vision course, the worksheet on planning that I think is pretty brilliant. Just little pitch for that
Little plug
course.
for that course.
Yeah, but it's true. We've developed a planning system over the years that's
Mhm.
both long term and short term and flexible. And I just
Mhm.
think that for me, it's in our conversation, the back and forth interaction that you and I have or when we're doing planning. I
Mhm.
think one of the big deals is we have planning meetings. We actually have to get together and have those conversations because
And I'm gonna,
otherwise, yeah,
yeah, and this is why having a coach, people.
yes.
There's a lot people are like, oh, I don't think coaches should need coaches, whatever, to build their business, or having a program, or having a colleague, having a team, having a partner. Really important to have someone to bounce things off of as you're planning, to put things out there, to have another person engage around it, to be your accountability partner, to be your brainstorming partner. I love that you brought that in, Curtis. So you and I, we have a partnership, but all the coaches listening to that, you have a potential. If you don't have one, you should get one.
We'll
Get
find
all
one.
those ways, get that support so that as you're planning, you get that. Oh, right, this looks good. And let's take a look at that. Maybe, the other thing you brought up here that feels so true to me. So we call our business soul driven success. So our planning always is listening to that inner wisdom as well as taking, I do chat GPT all the time now. I get I get information. How are things going out there with the economy? How are people selling their houses? How much money your coach is making? I'm always looking at that. What's the latest trend? And then I listen to my inner wisdom. So making that long that of short-term plan combining, the two whatever the logic with what your intuition is telling you. And I'm going to end today and anything you have to add to this, Curtis, and keep your eye on the long game. Keep your eye on it. We make visions every year. We've had a few shows about that, but there's even the longer game besides the 1 year. So take time to go, wow, what's my ultimate experience with this business? Like if it played out exactly as I wanted it, what is the ultimate way I want to be living my life? Not as a fantasy, But knowing that, if you have that, knowing, if you're clear on that, then making the short-term plan and executing it will be so much more fun.
I
Anything
love
to add?
it. Well, I was just thinking how you, at the outset, when you started being a coach, working as a coach, you had a plan, you had a vision
Hmm.
of yourself, and you've inhabited it. Sometimes some of that for many years, you've inhabited that
Yeah.
vision. And I am my only, I have a similar experience in the visioning I did back in the day, 20 years ago, when I first started doing visioning. And when the long-term plan plays out, take it in. For me, it's really
Yeah.
important to let
Okay.
myself know, like, wow, it's a trite phrase, but I'm living my dream. This
Mm.
is I'm working with the people that I want to work with. The partnership I have is amazing. This career that of coaching that I get to support is wonderful, and I get to do it. So
Yay.
take it in and let that remind you of the value, of what you bring to the world, and the value of, to support your point for this show, Kat, the value of
Yeah.
planning.
The
The long
value of
and short of planning.
yeah. So I'm gonna land it with that. If you don't have a long game, do some visioning. Do some time to dream and then hold that long game and take the steps with short-term planning that's inspired, that comes from your heart and soul, because you deserve it and the world needs what you have. So thank you, Curtis, for joining me today. And thank you, listeners. I appreciate it very much. I look forward to connecting with you on the next show. All right. Bye.
Yay.